13. Siloma. The Healing Spring. Here on Molokai, boat day always brings a feeling of anticipation. We never know what will come, but we're always hoping for news from home. And more supplies. One day, 2 years after I arrived, the steamer brought something that surprised all of us. Or most of us, anyway. Boki was in a hurry to get to the landing place that day, so we rode our horses fast like missionaries with an important job to do. Aloy did not have a horse, but as always he was there ahead of us. Sometimes I wondered if that boy ever slept. Bad Albert was there too. I could see he was hoping to win the attention of some young woman who came off the steamer. He kept pulling a comb out of his pocket to rearrange his oily hair and tidy his mustache. And he stood so close to the water's edge, ready to grab whatever he could, that I thought he would be knocked down by the waves. But Albert was not going to find a woman. We soon discovered that no new people were coming. I was always relieved when the boat came without new patients. I never got used to the sight of weeping patients struggling onto our scrap of land. And I did not like stealing from them. Boki grumbled when he realized there were no new patients to rob. He'd been bored and restless the week before and was looking for some distraction. The steamer also did not bring crates of food or supplies sent by our families. So there was nothing for Boki to steal, but he didn't need to worry about excitement. There was plenty of it on that day. I noticed that Kiona and her friends had gotten there early. Even the ones who could not walk had been brought in wheelbarrows or carried on the backs of friends. The Reverend Forbes came too. He was the American missionary who lived on the top side of Molokai and came for visits to Kiona's congregation. On this morning he'd come down the trail with Mr. Meyer. The Luna's oxen were there, attached to a cart. They snorted and bawled impatiently for their work to begin. But what would they carry? All of us were curious, but especially Aloy. The boy was squeezing himself into the little circle of believers as if he'd been attending their services all along. I watched his head moving back and forth as he followed their conversation. After Aloy had gathered sufficient information, he left the little group and ran to some patients who had settled in the grass. He waved and pointed toward Kiona and her friends. I thought I heard him say something about a church. Soon he was standing before Boki and me. They are bringing a church, he said. The Siloma people are building themselves a church. Surely Aloy had misunderstood. I knew that Kiona and her friends had tried to collect money for a church building. But money was scarce, and she had told me it would take a very long time. Here on the peninsula we never had enough food to eat or good houses to live in. And somehow this small group of people was building a church. But how? I asked. Aloy shrugged. I'll be right back, he said. And he dashed over to the congregation. He elbowed his way into their midst again and tugged on the Reverend Forbes's arm until the man stopped talking and listened to his question. When Aloy had the answer, he did not come right back to me. Instead he went to all the little clusters of people he'd talked to before. I could see Makanui jumping from one foot to the next and twirling herself until she was dizzy. Her playfulness reminded me of my sister. I wondered what Kimmy was doing just then, back at home in Honolulu. Was she starting to forget me? Makanui did not pay much attention to me, except to wave once when Boki was not watching. I wanted to go ask her how these Christians had gotten money to build a church. But I did not. And I knew she would not come to tell me. Not with Boki sitting beside me on his high horse. After Aloy had shared his information with everyone else, he came back to stand in front of us. They took up a collection, he said. And the Reverend Forbes carried it with a message to Topside. Aloy pointed to the top of the poly. The Reverend sent the message to newspapers in Honolulu. Their friends collected more money and shipped the boards. The church people are very happy. Praises to the Lord. He started to go away then, but suddenly he stopped and said to me, I gave you big news. Now you must give me something. Give him something? Me? I supposed he thought I had things of value, since I lived with Boki. But he didn't know that Boki kept nearly everything he made me steal. I got only the things he wanted me to have. Boki had wanted me to own a horse, and Maui was just what Aloy wanted. I need to ride your horse, he said. To take this news to people in Kalawao. Some people are too sick to come and watch. I was still thinking how to answer him when Boki reached down and swatted his ear. Get away from here, you filthy beggar, he yelled. Aloy grabbed at his ear and jumped back. Off with you. Boki poked his horse with his knees, urging him toward Aloy. The boy jumped back again and fell in his hurry to get away. He scrambled to his feet and ran. And get that haircut. Boki yelled. What did Boki think? That Aloy had a shiny pair of scissors in his pocket? If the boy had brought scissors with him to Molokai, Boki would have stolen them long before now. The church came in many pieces. We watched the sailors toss bundles of boards over the steamer rail. The incoming waves carried the planks toward shore. As the boards neared the landing, the Siloma people, the healthier ones among them, waded into the water to rescue them. They worked together to carry them to dry land. Then they piled them onto the Luna's ox cart. In this way the congregation brought a church to the peninsula. Delivering boards was tricky enough, but getting a keg of nails onto the shore was even trickier. But Hawaiians enjoy working together. People who did not even attend the Church of the Healing Spring went into the water to help. Some were Mormon, some Catholic, others did not claim any religion at all. Aloy was right there in the middle of the action. I guess he had decided not to tell the people back in Kalawao about the church that was coming on the steamer. I wanted to help, too. I was climbing down from Maui when Boki stopped me. You certainly will not help bring a church to Molokai, he snapped. What good has religion done anyone in this place? In some ways I agreed with Boki. I knew that the people of Siloma did not have more food or better houses than the people without religion. But sometimes I thought maybe they were wealthier than even Boki with all his stolen goods. At least they had each other. Well, I said, pointing to the smiling church members, look at the people of the Church of the Healing Spring. At least their religion gives them some joy in this place. Boki snorted. Healing Spring. Such a fine name they give themselves. Tell me, where is their healing water? Are they going to tote their boards into the valley and hammer them together by the stream? Half of them can't even walk to get their own drinking water. No, I said. They cannot. But the other half carries it to them. So I guess their religion brings them some good. Boki laughed and slapped me on the shoulder, so hard that it hurt. But look at me, he said. I have no religion at all and I have you to carry my water. I rubbed my hurting shoulder and did not say a word. I was thinking that I would much rather carry water for members of Siloma than be forced to get it for Boki. But I could not leave Boki even if I wanted to join the Siloma church. I was his slave now, and he would make trouble for me. And besides, he was right about some things. The church people did not have good clothes, enough food, or warm houses. As long as I stayed with Boki I had all those things. Kiona's friends made many trips across the peninsula with their wood. Kiona herself made only one. She stood in the grass where the people placed the boards and watched to be sure that no one took them. When people came near the wood she called out to them. If they meant no harm she gave a friendly aloha. But if they seemed too interested in the planks or she believed they meant to steal, she'd stand in front of the pile and say, "This wood belongs to the Lord in heaven. And his all-seeing eye is upon you." By this time Kiona needed crutches to walk anywhere, so she could not chase any thief away from that pile of boards. Yet for some reason no one would steal from her. I began to notice that Boki avoided her whenever he could. There was something about her that he seemed to respect. And I thought it was more than her thread about the eye of God. But what? Boki pretended not to be impressed by the church people, even though they worked just as hard to build the church as they did to get the boards, nails, and tools onto the shore. A man who was a carpenter was responsible for the building. But the church members helped. Some people who did not belong to the Siloma group also worked. After all, it was more interesting than waiting for the Board of Health to send a shipment of food and supplies. Day after day the building continued, but Boki never went near. Instead he complained about the noise their hammers made. But I liked the noise. It reminded me of life in Honolulu. With a building going up, the settlement seemed more normal. And the sight of that little church with its steeple pointing to the sky seemed to bring new hope to us. People left the valleys and came out of their huts, which were scattered across the peninsula. They straggled over to Kalawao village to watch the congregation work. And maybe they came to listen to the music. One of the men in the church had a ukulele. He was blind, but that did not stop him from helping. He played his instrument and sang along while others worked. But he didn't sing by himself. Soon Kiona and Makanui joined him. And others sang while they carried boards and hammered them into place. I watched all of this as I wrote about the peninsula doing Boki's misdeeds. The sight of those happy Hawaiians made my warm shirts and dry house uncomfortable. At night those church people were in my dreams. Or maybe it wasn't them. The little girl with the big eyes was not Makanui after all, she was Kimi. And the woman who sang was not Kiona but Kameka's tutu. My mother and Lonnie were there weaving mats and laughing while Kameka hammered the roof onto the church building. But then the hammering woke me. There was no singing or laughing or pounding of nails. Instead the windows were rattling as wind and rain beat against them. Not so far away, the ocean roared against the rocks until I feared it would escape its boundaries and come into our village. The night was so deep that I couldn't see the corners of the room. I worried about Kiona and Makanui in their simple thatched hut. I was sure they could not stay dry in this storm. I closed my eyes, hoping to recapture the brightness of my dream. But thoughts of cold, wet leprosy patients and the sounds of Boki's ragged snoring would not let me sleep. The joy I felt in the dream was not mine anyway. It belonged to the good people of Siloma. My life was not about the comforts of religion or about working together in the Hawaiian way. It was about having enough to eat. And staying warm and dry on blustery nights. And sticking with Boki so I would not lose any of those things.